The last night drive. The dashboard clock ticked past midnight. Ethan Carter's SUV hummed along the black stretch of Interstate 46, headlights cutting through the endless wall of darkness. On either side, pine trees loomed like watchtowers, their shadows stretching long and skeletal across the asphalt. Ethan's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. He wasn't supposed to be out here this late. Locals had warned him before, "Don't drive I-46 after midnight, strange things happen there." But Ethan wasn't a man who believed in ghost stories. He was a salesman, used to long nights and longer drives. Superstitions didn't pay the bills. And yet tonight, something felt wrong. The radio hissed with static no matter which station he tried. His cell phone had no service. The silence pressed in on him, so heavy it was almost physical. The only sound was the steady hum of the engine and the occasional crunch of gravel beneath his tires. Then, up ahead, he saw her. A figure, a woman, standing by the roadside in the glow of his headlights. She wore a pale dress, her long black hair hanging in a tangled curtain, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. She didn't wave, didn't step forward. She just stood perfectly still, her dark outline carved into the night. Ethan's gut told him to keep going. Don't stop. Don't look back. But instinct wasn't fast enough. His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror as he passed her. And she was gone. No trace. No shadow. Nothing. Ethan's chest tightened. He swallowed hard, forcing a laugh. Great, I'm seeing things now. But the temperature in the SUV dropped sharply. His breath fogged the windshield. The steering wheel was icy beneath his hands. Then came the sound, a whisper, so faint, so close, from the back seat. Ethan's knuckles whitened on the wheel. He glanced at the mirror, and his heart stopped. She was there, the woman in white, sitting silently in the back seat. Her head slightly tilted, her eyes two black voids that seemed to swallow the light. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, her pale skin reflecting faintly in the dim glow of the dashboard. Ethan swerved violently, the SUV screeching as it nearly left the road. His voice cracked. "What the hell?" He slammed the brakes, jerking to a stop on the shoulder. He spun around and the back seat was empty. But the faint smell of wet earth lingered in the air. Damp, decaying, as if she had crawled out of the ground itself. Ethan sat frozen for a moment, every hair on his body standing on end. He forced himself to breathe, to steady his racing heart. "I'm tired, that's all, just tired." He pulled back onto the road. Minutes later, Salvation appeared, a flickering neon sign ahead. Gas food. Ethan sighed in relief and pulled into the station. The place looked like it had been built decades ago and never updated. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow on the cracked pavement. The air smelled of gasoline and old cigarettes. Inside, behind the counter, sat a man in his late 60s. Wrinkled face, heavy eyes, a cigarette dangling between his fingers. He barely moved as Ethan stumbled in. "Hey," Ethan gasped, trying to catch his breath. "Listen, I think someone's following me out there. A woman dressed in white. She was in my car. I swear to God she was in my back seat." The cashier's eyes snapped open. He crushed the cigarette into the ashtray, leaning forward. His voice was rough but sharp. "You saw her?" Ethan froze. "What?" The man's eyes narrowed. "They call her the Pale Rider. She died on this road 30 years ago. Car crash. Right around mile marker 46. They buried her there, but she never left." Ethan's stomach dropped. He shook his head. No, that's just some urban legend." The man's voice hardened. "If you've seen her once, you'll see her again. The second time, she'll be closer. The third time..." He leaned forward, his eyes dark and heavy. "The third time, you won't be coming back." Ethan's skin crawled. He backed away, shaking his head. "You're crazy." But deep down, he knew the man believed every word. He ran back to his SUV, eager to escape the station, eager to leave behind the smell of stale cigarettes and the man's piercing stare. Back on the road, the silence pressed closer than before. The forest seemed thicker, the moon hidden behind clouds. The hum of the tires felt louder, unnatural. Then, his headlights flickered. The engine coughed. The SUV slowed to a stop, right beside mile marker 46. Ethan's pulse spiked. No, not here. Anywhere but here. The woods pressed in like a wall of shadows. The silence grew crushing. And then he saw her. Standing in the middle of the road. Her face was visible this time. Skin pale as bone, lips split into a jagged grin. Her hollow black eyes bore into him, piercing, endless. Slowly, her hand rose. The SUV's engine roared to life, then on its own. The headlights burst, glass shattering, plunging the road into darkness. Ethan screamed, fumbling at the wheel. The GPS, dead for miles, suddenly came alive. Its voice was flat. Robotic. Turn left. Before he could react, his hands moved on their own, yanking the wheel. The SUV veered off the highway, tires skidding onto a dirt road swallowed by fog. The forest closed in, branches scratching against the windows. The fog was so thick he could barely see 10 feet ahead. Then his phone lit up, though he hadn't touched it. On the screen, in glowing red letters, was one word. Run. Ethan's breath came in short gasps. This isn't real, this isn't real. But the SUV kept moving, faster, faster. And then, without warning, the road opened into a clearing. A graveyard. Forgotten. Crumbling stones leaned under the weight of moss. Weeds choked the earth. The place smelled of rot and damp soil, and in the center, freshly dug earth. A grave. With his name carved into the headstone, Ethan's blood turned to ice. No. Oh God, no. The doors slammed shut on their own. The locks clicked. The temperature plummeted. Frost spread across the inside of the windshield. And then, she was beside him, in the passenger seat, her pale face inches from his, her smile stretched unnaturally wide, teeth jagged and black. Her voice was like 1,000 echoes, layered and hollow. You shouldn't have driven tonight, Ethan. Tears stung his eyes. What do you want from me? Her head tilted, slow, deliberate. Company. The ground beneath the SUV rumbled. The earth split open, skeletal hands clawing up from the soil. They grabbed the tires, the doors, the frame, dragging the vehicle down into the grave. Ethan screamed, pounding the glass, struggling against the wheel. The woman leaned closer, her cold breath on his skin. Her whisper was soft. Final. Now you drive. Forever. The earth swallowed the SUV whole. Silence returned to the graveyard. When morning came, truckers spotted tire tracks leading off Interstate 46 into the woods. They followed them, but found no vehicle, no body. Just the lonely mile marker leaning crookedly in the dirt, and those who drive the highway at midnight sometimes see headlights appear in their mirrors. Sometimes they vanish without a trace. And sometimes, a pale woman is sitting quietly in the back seat. The house at Ashwood Lane. Michael Reed was 32 when he moved back to his hometown in Pennsylvania. His parents had passed, and their old farmhouse sat abandoned at the end of Ashwood Lane. The place had been empty for almost 10 years, but someone had to take care of it. The neighbors never came close. They crossed the street rather than walk past it. Kids dared each other to run up to the porch, but never stayed long. Michael thought it was just superstition. Until the first night. The first night. The house smelled of dust and damp wood. He set up an air mattress in the living room. Around midnight, the pipes groaned, footsteps creaked upstairs, and something heavy slid across the floor above him. Michael laughed nervously. Old house sounds, he told himself. But when he checked, the upstairs was empty. Dust covered the floors, no footprints. At 3:15 a.m., he woke again. Someone was whispering. He sat up, heart racing. The sound came from the hallway mirror. When he leaned close, the whisper grew clearer. You came back. The locked room. The next day, Michael explored the attic. Behind a stack of old boxes, he found a locked door. It wasn't on the floor plans. The wood around the lock was blackened as if scorched. He tried forcing it open, but it wouldn't budge. That night, he dreamed of it. In the dream, the door stood wide open. Inside was a small bedroom with a rocking chair. A figure sat in it, thin, gray-skinned, head bowed, rocking slowly. When the chair stopped, the figure looked up. It had no eyes. Michael woke drenched in sweat. From upstairs, faint creaking echoed. a rocking chair moving back and forth. Voices in the walls. By the third night, Michael barely slept. The house seemed alive. At sunset, shadows lingered too long in corners. Every reflective surface, mirrors, windows, even the turned-off TV, seemed to watch him. At midnight, scratching came from inside the walls, then voices, dozens of them, whispering his name. He shouted, slammed the walls with his fists, but the voices only laughed. When he pulled back his hand, the wallpaper where he struck was torn. Behind it was something carved into the wood, dozens of names. The last one scratched in deep letters, Michael Reed. The history. Shaken, he went into town the next day. At the library, he searched the archives. Old newspapers spoke of Ashwood Lane. Families who lived in the house vanished without explanation. Parents gone, children missing. Every time, the police found the same thing inside. One locked room sealed shut, the key always missing. The article ended with a quote from a survivor, a boy who escaped in 1964. He claimed the house feeds on whoever listens to the whispers. The return. That night, the whispers grew louder. Michael tried leaving, but the front door wouldn't open. Neither did the windows. The house groaned like it was breathing. The whispers all joined together into one voice. Open the door. Michael raced upstairs. The locked door shook violently, rattling on its hinges. Against his will, his hands reached for the knob. The lock slid open with a click. Inside was the small room from his dream. The rocking chair faced the wall. It began to turn slowly. The eyeless figure smiled at him with too many teeth. We've been waiting. The final night. Michael screamed and slammed the door, but it was too late. The whispers spread through every wall, every floorboard, every mirror. When he looked at the hallway glass, he no longer saw himself. Instead, he saw the rocking chair. Empty. Waiting. A hand reached out of the mirror, pale and thin, and gripped his arm. The world twisted. The house fell silent. The next morning, the house on Ashwood Lane was quiet again. Neighbors swore they heard rocking from the attic, but no one checked. Weeks later, a for sale sign went up. When the realtor unlocked the door, the hallway mirror reflected a man sitting in the attic, rocking back and forth. His mouth moved in silence, but if you leaned close, you could hear the whisper, "You came back." The room that wasn't there. Ethan Carter had just moved into a rundown apartment complex in Detroit. It was cheap, close to work, and the landlord didn't ask many questions. The building was old, built in the 1920s with endless hallways and peeling wallpaper. Half the units were empty. The residents that did live there kept to themselves. On his first night, Ethan noticed something strange. His lease said, Apartment 304. But when he climbed the stairs, the third floor ended at 303. No door after it, no 304 at all. He laughed it off, thinking it was a typo. But when he returned downstairs, the mailboxes included 304, and inside there was already a key. The door appears. 2 nights later, while heading up the stairs, Ethan froze. At the end of the hall, past 303, a new door stood. Apartment 304. The number was crooked, like it had been nailed there recently. The wood was darker than the other doors, wet-looking, as if it was sweating. Ethan unlocked it with the key from the mailbox. Inside was a single narrow room. No furniture, no windows. Just 4 walls and a single bare light bulb swinging overhead. As soon as he stepped inside, the door slammed behind him. The bulb flickered and faint scratching came from the walls. He left immediately, locking it behind him. The neighbor's warning. The next day, Ethan asked an old woman from down the hall about the new door. Her eyes widened. She shook her head quickly. "There's no 304, she said. There never was. Don't open it again." When he pressed, she walked away, muttering, "They always build another one when it's hungry." The room changes. That night, Ethan dreamed of the room. In his dream, the walls pulsed like veins. Something inside them whispered, "Why stay?" When he woke, he swore he heard the same whisper through the vents. Curiosity gnawed at him. The next evening, he unlocked 304 again. This time, there was furniture, a chair and a small table. On the table sat a photograph. It was Ethan, sleeping in his bed. The disappearance. The following days blurred. Ethan grew pale, restless, unable to sleep. Every night he swore he heard footsteps in his apartment. The whispers grew louder, always coming from the wall that touched 304. On the seventh night, neighbors heard screaming from Ethan's unit. By morning, his door was wide open. His apartment was empty. But now, apartment 304 looked different. The walls were freshly painted, the door was new, and the name on the mailbox had changed. It said, E. Carter, the new tenant. Weeks later, the landlord rented Ethan's old unit to someone new. The man unpacked his bags, happy with the cheap rent. As he climbed the stairs, he noticed something odd. The numbers ended at 303, but the lease said 304. And when he checked the mailboxes, there was already a key waiting for him. The last broadcast, Daniel Harlow was a late-night radio host in Ohio. His show, Midnight Talk, barely had an audience, but he liked the quiet hours. The studio sat in the middle of nowhere, a single-story building surrounded by woods. Every night from midnight to 4 a.m., he took anonymous calls. Most were truckers, insomniacs, or pranksters. But one night, a call came through at 1:13 a.m. that changed everything. The first call. The line crackled. A woman's voice whispered, broken and faint, "Don't let him in." Daniel frowned. "Who is this? You okay?" The caller didn't answer, just heavy breathing. Then, "He's at the window." Daniel glanced at the studio window. Nothing there, only black forest. When he looked back at the board, the line was dead. Strange listeners. The next night, the same time, 1:13 a.m., the same number called. This time, the voice was clearer. "He moves when you don't look." Daniel tried tracing the call. Nothing. It wasn't listed. Not even possible, according to the station's equipment. From then on, every night at 1:13, the woman called, and every night she sounded closer. The tape. After a week, Daniel checked the recordings. When he played them back, he noticed something terrifying. After every whisper from the woman, there was another sound layered beneath. A man's voice. Low, rumbling, almost like growling, and it always said the same thing. "Behind you." The visitor. On the seventh night, Daniel didn't answer the call. He let it ring. At 1:13, the line went silent. Then, a knock on the studio window. 3 sharp taps. Daniel's chest tightened. Slowly, he turned. A tall figure stood outside in the dark. No face, just a blank shape pressed against the glass. The phone rang again. He picked up with shaking hands. The woman's voice whispered, "Too late." The last show. Daniel tried to quit the show the next day, but the station manager insisted he stay. "Ratings are finally up," the manager said. "People love the creepy caller." That night at 1:13, Daniel answered one final time. "Who are you?" he demanded. The voice on the line wasn't the woman's anymore. It was his own. "You shouldn't have let me in." The lights in the studio went out. The transmission cut mid-sentence. The aftermath. In the morning, the police found the station empty. The equipment was still broadcasting, looping static and faint whispers. Locals swear that if you tune your radio between stations late at night, sometimes you'll catch it. A man's voice, calm and steady, announcing, "This is Daniel Harlow and you're listening to Midnight Talk." "If you keep listening long enough," he whispers something else. "He's right behind you." The lighthouse keeper, Aaron Blake, had inherited his uncle's lighthouse on the rocky coast of Maine. It had been abandoned for decades, but the old man left a note. "Keep the light burning, never let it go out." Aaron thought it was just superstition. He arrived one windy October afternoon, the waves crashing violently against the rocks below. The lighthouse was massive, taller than he remembered from childhood. Paint peeled from the walls and the spiral staircase creaked under each step. The first night. That evening, Aaron climbed to the top and lit the lantern. The light spun over the water, cutting through the fog. At 11:57 p.m., he thought he saw something moving in the shadows on the rocks, a figure pale and thin standing perfectly still. By midnight, the wind carried whispers through the lighthouse. He couldn't make out words, just low murmurs like waves echoing human voices. The visitors. The next day, Aaron explored the keeper's quarters. Old logbooks chronicled strange events, stormy nights, missing ships, and a warning repeated over and over. The sea takes what we let in. At night, he heard steps on the stairs. Slow, deliberate, but no one was there. The shadows in the lantern's glow seemed to shift, forming shapes that resembled people, watching. By the third night, the whispers were louder. Now, they called his name. Aaron. Aaron. The lighthouse changes. One stormy night, the power went out. Aaron rushed to the lantern, lighting it with the old oil lamps. Through the fog, he saw dozens of figures on the rocks, pale and eyeless, reaching toward the light. He tried to run back to the quarters, but the spiral staircase extended endlessly upward. The top seemed to stretch into the clouds. The whispers became voices shouting, "Keep it burning, or join us." The warning in blood. Desperate, Aaron grabbed a logbook and flipped through the pages. One entry, recent but undated, was written in shaky handwriting. Last keeper. He failed. The light went out. Now he waits. For the next one. A hand clamped onto his shoulder. He spun around. The keeper's shadow from the pages stepped out of the wall, pale, eyeless, smiling. Aaron ran to the lantern room. The figures outside screamed silently, their faces pressed against the rocks. He lit the lamp. The shadows shrieked and dissolved into the fog. But when he looked down, the rocks were empty. The new keeper. Weeks later, a tourist visited the lighthouse and saw the lamp glowing. Inside, Aaron was gone. Only the logbook remained, open to the last page. If you are reading this, the light is yours now. Do not fail. Outside, the waves crashed and faint whispers rode the wind. Keep it burning, or join us. The third floor doesn't exist. Marcus King was a night security guard at Belridge Memorial Hospital, a place built in the 1950s, half renovated, and still haunted by its history. Every night Marcus made his rounds. Lobby, first floor, second floor, then straight to the roof. There was no third floor. The elevator skipped from 2 to 4. The staircase wall between those floors was sealed with concrete, or so he thought. One night at 2:14 a.m., the elevator stopped. The digital panel flickered from 2 to 3. The doors opened. A hallway stretched in front of him, dimly lit with faded green tiles and buzzing overhead lights. The air smelled like bleach and old blood. Every door was shut tight, except one. Inside the open room, a hospital bed sat in the middle. Restraints hung loose from the rails. On the wall, someone had scratched, "I never left." The monitor beside the bed turned on even though it wasn't plugged in. A flatline beep echoed. Then the sound cut out. A low, slow breath filled the room. He turned around. The elevator was gone. Only a wall now. He ran, slamming on every door. They were all locked, until one creaked open on its own. Inside, rows of identical patients lay silently in beds, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. One turned his head slowly to face Marcus. "You're the new one," the patient said, smiling with no teeth. "It's your shift now." The lights flickered. The hallway stretched longer behind him. He ran until everything turned black. Marcus woke up the next morning in his security booth. He thought it was all a dream, until he checked the footage. The elevator had stopped at floor 3. The timestamp? 2:14 a.m., same as every night since. And on the footage, just before the screen turned to static, he saw himself still standing in that hospital room. Unmoving. The version sitting at the security desk. It smiled at the camera. The Static Man. Derek Miller was a truck driver who spent long nights hauling cargo across the Midwest. To stay awake, he kept his CB radio on low. Most nights it was just static and the occasional trucker voice. One night around 3 a.m. a voice came through the static. "Derek, don't look in the mirrors." He froze. No one should know his name. He checked his side mirror anyway. A man was sitting in the passenger seat. Pale face, black eyes, smiling. Derek slammed the brakes. The passenger seat was empty. His heart raced. The radio crackled again. "I told you not to look." Froze. No one should know his name. Checked, man. Passenger seat, pale face, black eyes, smiling. Slammed, brakes, passenger seat, empty. Heart raced. Radio crackled. I told you not to look. From then on, every time he passed a reflective surface, a rearview mirror, a window, even his phone screen, the man was there, closer, smiling wider. By dawn, Derek pulled into a rest stop. He splashed water on his face, telling himself it was lack of sleep. Then he looked into the restroom mirror. The man was right behind him. But this time, the reflection moved when Derek didn't. It leaned closer to the glass and whispered, "Trade places with me." The lights flickered. Derek stumbled back. When they steadied again, the mirror was empty. He sighed in relief, splashed water once more, and left the restroom. But the trucker who walked out wasn't Derek. His smile was too wide, his eyes were too black. And when the next driver used the restroom, the mirror showed Derek still inside, pounding on the glass. The wrong reflection. Rachel was brushing her teeth late at night. Her bathroom mirror was cracked at the corner, but she barely noticed anymore. She leaned down to rinse her mouth. When she looked back up, her reflection hadn't moved. It just stood there, staring. Rachel froze, foam dripping from her mouth. Slowly, she lifted her hand. Her reflection didn't. Then it smiled. The smile was too wide, stretching unnaturally across its face. It leaned closer to the glass and whispered, "Switch." Rachel stumbled back. The light above her flickered. When it steadied again, the mirror showed only an empty bathroom. Her toothbrush clattered to the floor. She turned around. Her reflection was standing behind her now outside the mirror, and she wasn't. The phone that rings at midnight. Jake Turner lived alone in a small apartment outside Chicago. His landline phone had been disconnected for years, but he kept it on the table, too lazy to throw it away. One night, at exactly midnight, it rang. The sound froze him. He picked it up. A woman's voice whispered, "I'm downstairs. Can I come up?" Jake slammed the phone down. He laughed nervously. Maybe a prank. He didn't even have service. The next night, the phone rang again at midnight, same voice, same words. "I'm on the second floor now. Can I come up?" Jake lived on the fourth floor. He unplugged the phone and shoved it in the closet. At midnight, it rang again. Loud, clear. "I'm right outside your door. Can I come in?" His apartment door creaked. The knob twisted slowly. Jake grabbed a bat, heart pounding, and yanked the door open. The hallway was empty, silent. He turned back inside and froze. The unplugged phone sat on the kitchen table again. The receiver lifted on its own. The woman's voice right behind him this time whispered, "I didn't need your permission." The lights went out. Neighbors later said they heard a phone ringing all night from Jake's apartment. When police finally entered, the place was empty. Only the phone remained, the receiver off the hook. Midnight flashing on the clock. The man under the streetlight. Olivia drove home late from work, cutting through the back roads of her small town. The streets were empty. The only light came from a single flickering street lamp ahead. Beneath it, a man stood perfectly still, tall, thin, his face hidden by shadows. As she drove closer, he raised his hand and waved slowly. Olivia's stomach tightened. She hit the gas and sped past him. But when she glanced in the rearview mirror, the streetlight behind her was empty. She breathed out. Maybe her mind was playing tricks. Then, a mile later, another lonely streetlight glowed in the distance. The same man stood under it, waiting. This time his hand wasn't waving, it was pointing directly at her. Olivia swerved around him and kept driving. Her hands shook on the wheel. Every mile, every streetlight, he was there, closer, pointing, smiling now. She finally reached her driveway, jumped out, and ran to her front door. When she turned to lock her car, the man was under the streetlight across the street from her house, still pointing at her. That night, she barely slept. At 3:11 a.m., her bedroom filled with a faint buzzing hum, like a street lamp. She opened her eyes. Her room was dark except for one harsh glow in the corner. A tall figure stood beneath it, smiling, pointing at her bed.